Arthur, yes. Your opinion, less preposterous. Option A?
Definitely not A.
Okay. Or B?
Let me see A again.
New year, new hashtag, new fan campaign. First off, Happy New Year, Hannah. Good to see you.
This is our first video since 2023.
It is, and we expect some really exciting things to be coming on the DC beat, including, hopefully, the reveal of some James Gunn news for the direction of DC.
Releasing some of the slate this month, so get
yeah,
excited.
That'll be cool. But in the meantime, we have to talk about the latest push by Zack's fans, the Snyderverse moving to Netflix.
Wait. Mother boxes?
So let me give everybody just a real quick rundown of where we are in case you are hearing about this for the very first time.
I have come to enlighten you.
The Snyder community, the fans of Zack Snyder who really love what he did in the DC realm with Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and then of course Zack Snyder's Justice League, have continued to campaign for ways for Zack to continue telling stories in his corner of the DC universe, which is of course very different from what we've seen from DC moving forward, and we expect also to be extremely different from what James Gunn is going to be doing in his next phase with Peter Safran. And they've had a couple of different attempts at keeping the momentum of Zack Snyder going after HBO Max decided that they were going to release the full Snyder Cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League.
What happened?
So first it was Restore the Snyderverse, which
made sense to me. Like, that's a logical next hashtag to rally behind, sure.
Now what?
Instead of sort of coming to terms with like, hey, that was the thing that we pushed for with our very successful hashtag Release the Snyder Cut campaign, let's keep going and see if we can get these other two movies that Zack has talked about, loosely having the template for, which would include exploring the darker side of Superman, having Darkseid come to Earth, the death of Lois Lane, all these other...
Kind of, it's the nightmare scene from Zack Snyder's Justice League, like right before they resurrect Superman. Like that sort of lane is where the next chapter of storytelling would go before coming back in another movie and wrapping things up nicely.
Actually, everything that's on my shirt that I'm wearing right here today. And honestly, I pulled this out of the drawer today and didn't realize that I was wearing this for the point of this video.
Yeah, you're a bad liar.
There was a display in Dallas, like shortly after the Snyder Cut was getting released or had been released, which was like storyboards of where his next two Justice League Part 2 and Part 3 were going to go. So I understand why these fans believe that there is still something else that is owed to them, and that they want to come up with some way that they can get it to come back.
We will stop at nothing to possess it. Ready the Armada. We will use the old ways.
Especially like before all the James Gunn stuff was announced, and the DC EU as it was back then was still kind of
What a joke.
Like with the Flash, potentially people were saying like, oh, maybe that'll open things back up since Ben Affleck's Batman is going to be in that movie. And so there was hope. Mm-hmm. Like I will say, like, I don't think that hashtag was like, so, Looney Tunes.
It wasn't a bad idea.
Correct. Way more logical than where we're going to get to in a second, which is the new hashtag campaign they're trying to get. But even that one though, Hannah, the Restore the Snyderverse had a bunch of obstacles going for it.
Maybe one.
Like locking up these actors for multiple films.
I found one.
And spending the money that Warner Brothers would need to do in order to let Zack make these films.
I found two
that are also sort of contradicting the universe that they had in place.
3.
But here's what I will say, that like I do feel really bad for the fans that have been holding out hope for stuff like this.
It's not fair.
I thought you didn't care.
I never said that.
When they hear news like Henry Cavill announcing he's back as Superman, and that in the weird transition stage between Warner Brothers allowing James Gunn to sort of go in a different direction and them still maybe holding on to and entertaining The Rock's pitch of like, hey, maybe I'm going to be the new face of DC. That's
right.
Gotta be heartbreaking, right? Like they have a video that they can look at of Henry saying,
I am back as Superman.
And then it
was heartbreaking
like
to me.
weeks.
I was like, this sucks. Like you can't do that to people's emotions, especially this fan base that's so invested and vocal and open about this stuff. It's just like, I know we talked a million times about just some of the business decisions that have been made at Warner Brothers are just like bananas, right. But you just like, I feel awful for them as well.
Your heart was tested.
I know it's been hard, Clark.
And I honestly do feel that, just to hang on Warner Brothers just for a little bit longer, that they don't make decisions with the fans in mind.
I know.
And that goes down to the cancellation of Batgirl, and it goes down to allowing Henry Cavill to make an announcement. You know, the fan expectation, especially like you say in this franchise, is so super high, and they are so in tune with everything that you were telling them, or hinting at them, or suggesting
hanging
at them.
on every word, every image, everything.
I mean, Zack can't like a Twitter post without them translating it into
Holy writ.
So let's get into the new hashtag Twitter campaign that the Snyder fans, and again, this isn't all Zack Snyder fans. This is a very, I won't even say select. I think it's a pretty large group of people who spend their time on social media and think that they can get a hashtag campaign going to keep the Snyder dream moving forward.
And apparently it works.
And this one is complicated. This is a mouthful. I've seen two different versions of it. I've seen sell the Snyderverse to Netflix, hashtag sell the Snyderverse to Netflix. I don't even know how many characters that is, but it's a lot. So it limits what you're gonna be able to say in the rest of the post.
You're not gonna talk so much, you know.
And the other one is hashtag license the Snyderverse to Netflix. So in some way, shape, or form, Snyder's fans would like the quote unquote Snyderverse, which is really just like a non-existent entity, made up of characters that belong to Warner Brothers, and sell them over to Netflix or license them over to Netflix, where Zack currently has a successful deal going for both the Army of the Dead franchise and Rebel Moon. And we both know that this will never happen.
More or less.
More or more less?
Probably more or less.
But I want your reaction to these hashtags right off the bat.
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to throw it back to something that James Gunn said a couple weeks ago, where there was like a rumor that Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is like completely dead in the DCU. And he responded and he was like, I never said that. Not confirming it, but leaving that door open. And in my mind, I'm like, there is no world in which Warner Brothers, who also has a streaming service, like Netflix is a competitor, would say, we're going to give you Gal Gadot, who's like proven box office. We're going to give you her version of Wonder Woman to go be on Netflix. Like, no, They would keep that for themselves if they wanted to do that. And I know that, like, with the whole... Bruce! Shut up.
Please keep that in.
Why did you say that name?
That is my Chihuahua, Bruce Wayne. He has separation anxiety. Sorry, I have to keep him in here.
He's my little dumpling.
Bring him into the video.
Bruce, come here, buddy. Bruce.
Come here, Bruce.
Come here. Come here. Bruce.
Master Wayne.
Oh my god. I'm so sorry. I don't even remember what I was saying. Bruce! Oh, this is what I was saying. I know that, like, with HBO Max canceling a bunch of stuff, they're potentially talking about giving some of those series to other streaming services, seeing if they do well to license them that way. That will never happen with something that isn't already made. Like, that doesn't make any business sense, and it doesn't make any business sense with, I don't know, arguably the largest IP that Warner Brothers owns.
Right.
I don't see what the incentive would be for them to do that, and they're a business, so there has to be an incentive for them to do that.
Money, power.
The power of love.
Let's talk incentive, because using it in the comparison of the Snyder Cut, there was incentive for Warner Brothers to release Zack's version of the movie. HBO Max needed a boost at that point. You wanted to give them an exclusive bit of content that people would subscribe to the streaming service to get. But there's incentive. It was a business incentive for them to eat crow and say, yeah, we messed up. And yeah, we're giving in to you guys who've been pestering us for 3 years. But here is the version of the movie that you want. As you say, there is completely, not only is there no incentive for them to get rid of the characters that are extremely valuable to them, it's detrimental for Warner Brothers to give these characters to a competitor and say, go ahead and make something which theoretically could end up better than whatever Warner Brothers is trying to put out.
Like, you don't want that competition, especially when you're letting James Gunn relaunch his own vision. You're not going to also greenlight a separate vision at a different streaming service.
That's just a strategy to lose more slowly, not to win.
And I've seen an additional hashtag, that was hard to say, that just says sell Zack Snyder's Justice League to Netflix, which like, again, why? Because if people are going to HBO Max still to watch that, like I do, I'll throw it on every so often. Like, why would they want people to go do that on Netflix? Like,
no, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
We're stronger together.
And not only that, there's a thing that I really want to talk about in terms of brand confusion, because it's like something that the fans can't seem to understand. And I think DC already has a bit of brand confusion as it is, because of the Matt Reeves corner of their universe and the Todd Phillips Joker corner of their universe. Like, I think when James Gunn announces whatever his 8 to 10 year plan is going to be, it's going to have to explain, or at least, you know, figure out how they're handling those properties, because they're still under the big DC umbrella, but they're not theoretically tied to whatever the storyline is going to be going forward. So they have to wrestle with that. God, could you imagine then if they then created a third or fourth, you know, wing of a potential DC thing that said, oh, so what Batman are we talking about? Well, it's probably Pattinson. No, it's the one that's going in James Gunn's story. Oh, no, it's Affleck and he's over at Netflix. Like, you just don't do this. It's so much confusion.
Not all the king's horses, nor all the king's men could have.
I'm operating strictly on faith, not on reason.
I do understand that there is a bit of a precedent that they can sort of point to, which is the Spider-Man Sony Marvel deal, right? Like, there is an example of a studio licensing off its extremely popular character and going over to a competitor. And I think even the parties that are involved in that deal, both on the Marvel side and the Sony side, would tell you that it's extremely complicated. And we saw a couple of years ago where it almost fell apart. Like, it took Tom Holland stepping in to say, hey, please, can we keep doing this for a content and entertainment perspective? But Sony wasn't trying to actively make their own separate Spider-Man movie.
Well, and also Sony owned the rights to those characters first, and Marvel was the one licensing. Netflix has no current ownership over anything in DC, so it's not even like they would have to come to that sort of like agreement, because there's no
there's no way forward for that.
I don't think they're interested in sharing this world.
So here's where I think we have to get into some really complicated conversations with the people who are still doing the Snyder stuff online. And I honestly don't think that any of them are really watching this video, but on the case that they are potentially watching,
they've already disliked and bailed.
These campaigns have to stop. They have to stop.
I want you to give all that up.
You're gonna get maced again.
I honestly do think that the release of Snyder Cut campaign and the community, despite some of the negativity that was associated with it, did some truly wonderful things. Like, that's the reason why I wanted to write that book about what they accomplished. And I think the things that they did in terms of raising awareness and actual funds for suicide prevention are fantastic.
Absolute best of the best.
And I understood that there was a goal in mind for that community to get Zack's version restored. And that made sense to me. But everything else that they've been doing it beyond that point, and I think that there's a significant people who got that movie and then were like, I'm out. That's what I wanted. I got to see that, and they moved on. But the rest of the people just needed something to keep fighting for.
You did it. You put the team together to fight this war. You've fulfilled your promise. But to try to do that, I mean...
Now we're at the point where these hashtag campaigns, like this one in particular, is so ludicrous and just doesn't make sense on any level, from a creative storytelling standpoint or a financial standpoint, that it's time to just let it go. It's time to stop. You guys have to understand that, like, David Zaslav is not paying attention to this campaign.
So that's the other thing, is like Warner Brothers has changed hands since that happened. Like when the Snyder Cut was like greenlit to be released on HBO Max, that was when AT&T owned Warner Bros. Like, everybody in charge is not that like was like, you know, entertaining that and maybe even like not shutting down any rumors that things could have been restored. Like, none of those people are here anymore.
Oh wow, they really just vanish, huh?
And you know, there's even an element in that, Hannah, that I think people can find, because we mentioned earlier how like they sort of pick up on every little detail. You can point to the fact that like James Gunn used Zack's actors in Peacemaker, right?
Or that like even Black Adam like switched out that one shot that was from Justice League with the Zack Snyder's Justice League shot when like fans got upset on Twitter. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
I mean, you're not discouraging people from thinking that this is a reality necessarily.
Right. Yeah, so in a way, in my heart, I get it. I get why they're clinging to that bit of hope. But these social media campaigns are not the way forward. And again, I can't
Or
emphasize
like just
enough.
like let's just wait and see what James Gunn has to say, because it could be really exciting and something to rally around. And like if you love these characters, don't you just want to see something like cohesive with a plan be built and get excited for something in the future instead of just like living in the past?
Au contraire, my little fish stick.
I think that those are for fans who love the characters more than they love these specific interpretations of the characters. And sometimes it's really hard to just let things go.
But the world's not fixed in the past, only the future.
But again, like I do understand that like when Henry steps out and says like, all right, I'm back, that you're like, oh my God, we're getting the band back together and this is it. And then the rug gets pulled.
And they rip out your
on
heart
an emotional
and stomp
level.
on it.
Yeah, on an emotional level, I get it. But we had to do this video to just talk through the fact that like on a creative and financial level, like none of it makes sense. And it doesn't, I get that it feels like the nail is pounded into the Snyderverse coffin, but they won't knock it in all the way. They leave it up just a tiny bit. And I think it's actually now at this point, cruel. It's cruel to that fan base to keep sort of dragging them along.
It's toxic.
And instead, you know what you guys can do is go support Rebel Moon. Like Zack is working. He's actively working and he's building out, as he has said, he has these original IP. You know, why would he ever go back and put himself in the hands of a corporate overlord who has so many parameters that they're slapping around, you know, what he can and cannot do with certain storylines? Support the ones that he's actually actively doing. If he's the filmmaker that you guys really believe in, yeah, he can't play in the sandbox that you really appreciate, but go support the other stuff that he is doing.
Your words, not mine. But yeah.
The man's got a fan base. Like they have said, like these fans that have been lobbying behind support for Zack will point out that someone like James Cameron, you know, says, hey, when a Zack Snyder movie comes out, I get excited because I think he's an exciting filmmaker. Like, the industry respects Zack and wants to see what else he's going to do. There's a reason why Netflix essentially backed the truck up to him and said, you know, here's all the money in the world. Do what you want. Exactly. Do what you want. So we'll see when that comes around. But I don't know. I kind of feel like this might be the last video that we make about this topic. Is there anything else we could potentially say? I guess if Gunn gives us a little bit of hope, we might be back here.
Yeah, or I
discussing
mean, if on
the
February
possibility.
14th, it just like goes insane on the internet. But to
Oh my
your
God,
earlier,
wouldn't that just be the funniest? Wouldn't that be the funniest if the thing just trends?
yeah,
through the
we're
roof?
just eating crow. But yeah, I mean, never say never, I guess.
I'm not going to say it.
All right, so the next thing I assume we're going to be discussing is Gunn's announcement, which when he lays out the I saw a date. Someone said like the 14th or 15th of January might be when he's revealing it. I don't know how legitimate that is. It's on social media, but you know, it might be that early that we're hearing about.
He did
something
say
from what he's
this
gonna
month
do.
he would reveal something, so we're getting there.
All right. Well, then we'll be able to parcel out what that means. Of course, we have several DC films to look forward to this year. So make sure you like and subscribe the videos here and the channel. And that way, every time Hannah and I circle back around and do a new video filled with wonderful DC content, you guys will be the very first ones to come on over and watch it.